So picture this. You just polished off a plate of killer hot wings. Or maybe you suddenly woke up at 2 in the morning with your chest literally on fire. Have you ever found yourself desperately reaching for one of those little chalky tablets to put out the flames? If you have, you are absolutely not alone. It's a universally familiar experience, right? We just grab these over-the-counter quick fixes, pop them in our mouths, and wait for the relief to wash over us. But how often do we actually stop to think about what it is we're swallowing?
Well, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack the fascinating, somewhat hidden science and honestly, the surprising risks behind everyday antacids. We're going to dive right into the remarkable chemistry of how these over-the-counter meds actually do their job inside your body. And as you'll see, we'll uncover some historical and frankly dangerous medical complications that might just be hiding in plain sight right there in your medicine cabinet.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the heartburn problem.
Before we get into all the cool chemistry, it really helps to understand the sheer scale of the problem we're facing today. It's this massive demand that has turned these tiny, chalky tablets into a total modern staple. Get this, up to 28% of adults in North America experience heartburn at least once a week. Just let that sink in for a second. More than a quarter of the population is dealing with this uncomfortable burning sensation on a weekly basis, and a full 25% of adults report dealing with it every single day. This is a massive, ubiquitous issue, which is exactly why millions of us are constantly migrating to the pharmacy aisle just looking for some relief.
Which brings us to part 2, how antacids actually work. So, what exactly is happening inside your stomach to give you that relief? Well, if you flip over a bottle of antacids, you'll see a variety of active ingredients listed, and they all fundamentally rely on some pretty basic chemistry. The primary players here are specific cationic salts. We're talking about things like aluminum salts, calcium carbonate, magnesium salts, and sodium bicarbonate. Now, these aren't just random chemicals thrown together. These are highly effective, powerful, active ingredients designed to act as a rapid response team against your stomach acid.
And they pull this off through a process called neutralization. Neutralization is really just the chemical process of raising your stomach's pH level. When that alkaline salt hits your highly acidic stomach, boom, a chemical reaction happens that instantly reduces the acidity. But it actually does something else too. By raising the pH above 4, it inhibits a proteolytic enzyme called pepsin. Now, normally pepsin is great for breaking down the proteins in your food. But when acid refluxes, pepsin kind of goes rogue and can start breaking down the lining of your esophagus. So the antacid neutralizes the acid that's already there and stops pepsin right in its tracks, giving you that immediate cooling relief.
Moving on to part 3, comparing heartburn treatments.
If you've ever stood staring at the pharmacy aisle, you know the options are totally overwhelming. So how do antacids stack up against other modern medical treatments? On one side, we have our antacids. As we just learned, they work by chemically neutralizing the acid that is already hanging out in your stomach. It's an instant fix. On the other side, though, we have proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs like Prilosec. These take a completely different, much more preventive approach. Instead of dealing with the acid that's already there, PPIs absorb into your bloodstream and actually shut down the tiny enzymes, literally the proton pumps, in your stomach lining, stopping them from producing acid in the first place.
To put that into perspective, let's break down the timeline. Antacids act immediately, sure, but they only give you about 1 to 3 hours of relief. They're really meant for that occasional, wow, I just ate way too many nachos type of heartburn. Then you have H2 blockers. These actually block histamine, which is a signal telling your stomach to make acid, and they can give you up to 12 hours of relief. Again, meant for occasional use. And finally, those PPIs offer up to 24 hours of continuous protection, but they are specifically designed for people suffering from frequent chronic heartburn. They might take a few days to reach full effect, but they offer long-term management.
Now let's get into the tricky stuff, part 4, side effects and interactions.
Because antacids give us that awesome, instant 1 to 3 hour gratification, it is so incredibly easy to fall into the habit of popping them like candy. But there are some very real hidden dangers to chronic, frequent antacid use. First off, there's something called acid rebound. This is a super frustrating phenomenon where altering your stomach's pH actually triggers your body to panic and produce even more acid to compensate, making your symptoms way worse. Plus, depending on whether you're taking aluminum or magnesium-based antacids, you might end up experiencing severe constipation or diarrhea. But it gets more systemic than that. Chronic use can literally alter how your body absorbs vital nutrients, potentially leading to microcytic anemia, which is an iron deficiency, or osteopenia, which is a dangerous weakening of your bones.
And then we have to talk about the critical issue of drug interactions.
Because antacids literally change the chemical environment of your stomach, they can dangerously block the absorption of other life-saving medications. If you take an antacid, it can bind to antibiotics, heart medications, or thyroid drugs, essentially rendering them useless. So the golden rule you absolutely need to remember is this: wait at least 1 hour before taking other medications, or wait a full 4 hours after taking an antacid to safely take your other prescriptions.
Just to underscore exactly how serious this is, there's a stark warning from the StatPearl's medical text. It notes that using antacids concomitantly with acidic drugs can result in impaired absorption, reducing the blood concentrations of the drugs and impairing their therapeutic effects. This is the very real, very scary danger of polypharmacy. By just trying to fix a little indigestion, you could accidentally be sabotaging your primary, life-saving healthcare treatments.
Which leads us to our final and maybe most surprising segment, Part 5, the milk alkali syndrome. Of all the complications associated with antacid overuse, there's one that stands out as arguably the most dangerous. It's this wild, historical disease that is making a very modern and very dangerous comeback. Way back in the early 1900s, a doctor named Bertrand Sippy came up with a popular treatment for stomach ulcers. His idea? Have patients drink copious amounts of milk and take alkali powders. And hey, it worked for the ulcers. But by the mid-1900s, doctors Cuthbert Cope and Charles Burnett realized this weird diet was causing a severe, sometimes fatal illness in patients. They dubbed it milk alkali syndrome. When modern ulcer drugs were eventually invented, the syndrome practically vanished overnight. But, and here is the crazy part, from the 1990s up to the present day, it is back. Why? Because of the massive rise in over-the-counter calcium carbonate supplements. This is the exact same active ingredient in many antacids, and it's being taken by people trying to prevent osteoporosis or just self-treating their chronic heartburn.
So what actually happens? Well, when a person consumes way too much calcium carbonate, usually we're talking more than 4 to 5 grams a day, they can trigger what is known as the lethal triad of milk alkali syndrome. First, you get hypercalcemia, which is a massive, dangerous spike of calcium in the blood. This excess calcium forces the kidneys to flush out sodium and water, leading to severe dehydration. This dehydration then triggers metabolic alkalosis, where your blood actually becomes way too alkaline. Ultimately, this terrible cycle chokes off the blood supply to the kidneys, leading to acute kidney injury. The calcium can even start crystallizing inside your kidney tissues permanently. It is a severe, life-threatening cascade, all triggered by over-the-counter calcium antacids.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought. Just something to consider the next time you feel that familiar burn creeping up your throat. Is your quick fix antacid actually masking a more serious underlying condition? Because if you're reaching for that chalky tablet every single day, you aren't just risking nutrient deficiencies, crazy drug interactions, or even milk alkali syndrome. You might be ignoring a bigger gastrointestinal issue that desperately needs a doctor's attention. Look, antacids are a brilliant feat of basic chemistry, and they're a fantastic tool for occasional relief, but they are absolutely not a cure. Stay curious, stay informed, and always, always listen to what your body is trying to tell you.